Hello everyone, this is Rainier Books. My name is Rainer and I'm a booktuber based in Sweden, coming from Germany, but doing this in English. And today it is Wednesday. No, I'm lying to you. It's Sunday, but I'm filming this video for Wednesday night, 2 a.m. Central European time. It will be released on YouTube. And this is my prediction of the International Booker Prize Longlist of 2023. Yeah, it's the second big long list that is going to appear this year after the Women's Prize that will come out next week on, I think, March 7. And I made a video about the long list, my predicted long list for the Women's Prize up here in the corner. You can click on it and you can see it and then return hopefully to this amazing video. So let's talk about the long list for the International Booker Prize. Let's do it. First, please let me speak about some of the rules, because every prize has its rules, its regulations for books being submitted and called in, as they say at the Booker. So there are some rules that you should know about so that you know which books might be entered, which might be there on the long list according to the rules. First, let's talk about money. Money is everything. Money is, follow the money, they always say in very good thrillers or not so good thrillers. But follow the money. And the International Booker Prize gives 50,000 quid, 50,000 British pounds to the winner. But the winner has to share this money, the author, with a translator. And that is a beautiful thing. It's a great recognition for the great work the translators do all over the world when they translate not only literature into English, but into other languages. They give another audience, sometimes a big, sometimes a smaller audience, the chance, the opportunity to read a work of fiction that they otherwise couldn't take into account. So 50,000 quid. If you get shortlisted for the prize, which a couple of books will do, I think 6 will be on the shortlist. Every shortlisted book that not wins gets 5,000 quid, 5,000 pounds, 2,500, same situation here for the translator, and 2,500 for the writer. The work for the 2023 prize must be published in the UK or Ireland, in the UK or Ireland between May 1st, 2022 and April 30, 2023. So we have like 6 weeks here overlapping with books that might be published in the future and that have been submitted to the jury and called in by the jury, as they say here at the Booker Prize. The International Booker Prize is a very young award, if you might know that. For the first time it was awarded in 2005 to the Albanian writer Ismail Kadar on June 27, 2005 at an award ceremony in Edinburgh, Scotland. But in 2005, even American writers were eligible, and the rules were completely different for the Booker International. The American writer Saul Bellow, for example, was shortlisted for his entire body of work. And other shortlisted authors in the first year were Margaret Atwood, John Updike, and Doris Lessing. In 2009, Canadian writer Alice Munro won the International Booker. In 2011, the prize went to Philip Roth from the US. In 2013, again to the US, to Lydia Davis. In 2014, the Booker Prize, the one that was given to authors from the UK and Ireland, was widened to any English language novel, which sparked a controversy, a huge discussion, because it opened up especially for the vast amount of authors from the United States. However, this had implications, of course, on the International Booker Prize. Until then, it was awarded biannually, 2005, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15. But then it changed its course. It had to change its course because all English authors were, English-speaking authors, English-writing authors were admitted to the Booker. So the International Booker had to turn to translated literature. And the first winner in this new edition in 2015 was the Hungarian writer Laszlo Krasznahorkai. I will try to pronounce this name somehow correctly because we come back to that name later in this video. From 2015 onwards, the International Booker was awarded annually. 2023 will be the 14th time the International Booker is awarded, or if you count from only international books and from 2015, the 9th time, if you want to count the current rules and regulations only. But let's get to the long list that I predict for this year's International Booker. The first book comes from Bulgaria, and this is, I think, one of the favorites, if I might say so. It sounds so fascinating. I haven't read it yet, but this is Time Shelter by Georgi Gospodinov, translated from the Bulgarian language by Angela Rodel, published by WNN on May 12 in 2022. A man named Gostin opens a clinic for the past that offers a promising treatment for Alzheimer's sufferers. Each floor reproduces a decade in minute detail, transporting patients back in time. The novel is narrated by Gostin's unnamed assistant, and slowly, healthy patients from outside the clinic start trying to become patients to this clinic in order to evade the horrors of the present time in which we live in. But then, the past slowly starts to have its repercussions on the present. Time Shelter cements Georgi Gospodinov's reputation as one of the indispensable writers of our time, a major voice in international literature. Number 2 is Standing Heavy by Goz. I hope I pronounced it right here. Translated from the French by Frank Wynne and published by Maclehose Press on May 26 in 2022. This novel covers 3 decades and 2 generations of immigrants from Côte d'Ivoire in Africa, or Ivory Coast, to France, to Paris, France, trying to make their way as undocumented workers, taking shifts as security at a flour mill. Sharply satirical, political, and poignant, Standing Heavy is a searingly witty deconstruction of colonial legacies and capitalist consumption, an unprecedented and unforgettable account of everything that passes under a security guard's gaze. Dogs of Summer by Andrea Abreu, translated from the Spanish by Julia Sanchez and published by WNN on June 9, 2022. This is a novel about a 10-year-old girl. She's living in the mountains in a village on Tenerife in Spain, on the island of Tenerife. The world in which she lives in is a bit boring, it's a bit sad, but she has a friend, a beautiful friend, the same age almost. Her name is Izora, and she likes everything about Izora. Likes the color of her arms, her hair, and her eyes, of Izora's eyes, her handwriting, the way she writes the letter G with a huge tail, and she's so fangirling almost for her friend Izora. But then slowly, this admiration turns into something negative, something bad, and she envies her too, envies her grits and gut and the way she talks to grown-ups. As the summer goes on, she finds it increasingly hard to keep up with Izora, growing up at full tilt without her. When the narrator's submissiveness veers into obsession, desire becomes indistinguishable from intimate violence. Braiding prose poetry with bachata lyrics and the gritty humor of Canary dialect, Dogs of Summer is a brutal picture of girlhood in the 1990s and a story of a friendship that simmers into erotic desire over the course of one hot summer. A System So Magnificent It Is Blinding by Amanda Svensson, translated from the Swedish by Nicolas Smelly and published by Scribe UK on July 14, 22. In October in 1989, a set of triplets is born. This is Sebastian, Clara, and Matilda. Sebastian is recruited 20 years later to join a mysterious organization, the London Institute of Cognitive Science, where he meets a patient who cannot see the world in 3 dimensions. Meanwhile, Clara has traveled to Easter Island to join a doomsday cult, and Matilda is in Sweden. She's still in Sweden, trying to escape from the color blue. Then something happens that forces the triplets to reunite. Their mother calls with worrying news because their father has gone missing. And she has something to tell them, a 25-year-old secret that will change all their lives. Number 5, The Pachinko Parlor by Elisa Chua du Sapin, translated from the French by Anissa Abbas Higgins and published by Daunt Books on August 18 last year. Claire, a French woman with Korean roots, finds herself dividing her time between tutoring 10-year-old Mieko in an apartment in an abandoned hotel and lying on the floor at her Korean grandparents' home, daydreaming, playing Tetris, and listening to the sounds from the street above. And their grandparents own a pachinko parlor in Tokyo, Japan. It is a nuanced and beguiling exploration of identity and otherness, unspoken histories, and the loneliness you can feel amongst family. Crisp and enigmatic, du Sapin's writing glows with intelligence, and yes, I can confirm that. I read it earlier. I read it last year and I just loved it, like I also loved the first book by Elisa Chua du Sapin, A Winter in Sakcho, and I can't wait for the third one to come. It's already there in French. From a Nobel Prize laureate is the next book, Nights of Plague by ORHAN PAMUK, and translated from the Turkish by Ekin Oklap, published by Faber and Faber on September 20 last year. 1901, night draws in. With the stealth of a spy vessel, the royal ship Azizia approaches the famous vistas of Mingeria, the 29th state of the ailing Ottoman Empire. The ship carries Princess Pakiz, the daughter of a deposed sultan, her doctor husband, and the royal chemist Bankovsky Pasha. Not all of them will survive the weeks ahead. There are rumors of plague, rumors some in power will try to suppress. But plague is not the only killer. Mingeria is on the cusp of catastrophe, and the future of a fragile empire is at stake. The next book is called Cocoon by the Chinese author Zhang Yuran, translated from the Chinese by Jeremy Tiang and published by World Editions on October 6 last year, and I just started to read it. Chang Gong and Li Jiaqi go way back. Both hailing from dysfunctional families, they grew up together in a Chinese provincial capital in the 1980s. Many years later, the childhood friends reunite and discover how much they still have in common. Both have always been determined to follow the tracks of their grandparents' generation, to the heart of a mystery that perhaps should have stayed buried. What exactly happened in that night in 1967 in the abandoned water tower? Zhang Yuran's layered and hypnotic prose reveals much about the unshakable power of friendship and the existence of hope. Hers is a unique, fresh voice in Chinese literature, shedding a different light on the country's recent past. Next one is from Germany. This is Thousand Coils of Fear by Olivia Wenzel, translated by a person I know, Priscilla Lane. She is an associate professor of German at the University of North Carolina. And the book was published by Dialogue Books on November 10 in 2022. A young woman attends a play about the Berlin Wall coming down and is the only black person in the audience. She's sitting with her boyfriend by a bathing lake and 4 neo-Nazis show up. She's having sex with a stranger in New York and Donald Trump wins the US elections. Engaging in a witty question and answer with herself, she takes stock of our rapidly changing times, sometimes angry, sometimes amused, sometimes afraid, and always passionate. And she tells the story of her family. Her mother, a punk in former East Germany, who never had the freedom she dreamed of. Her Angolan father, who returned to his home country before she was born to start a second new family. Her grandmother, whose life of obedience to party principles brought her prosperity and security, but not happiness. And her twin brother, who took his own life at the age of 19. Heartrending, opinionated, and wry, Olivia Wenzel's remarkable debut novel is a clear-sighted investigation into origins and belonging, the role society wants to force us in, and why we need to resist them, and the freedoms and fears that being the odd one brings. From Japan, Idol Burning by Rin Usami, translated from the Japanese by Asa Yoneda, published by Canongate on November 3 in 2022. High school student Akari has only one passion in her life, her oshi, her idol. His name is Masaki Ueno, best known as one-fifth of Japanese pop group Maza Maza. He's the spine of her life, she cannot survive without him. When Masaki is rumored to have assaulted a female fan, facing waves of social media backlash, Akari's world falls apart. Offering a vivid insight into otaku culture and adolescence, Idol Burning is a brilliantly gripping story of obsession, coming of age, and the addictive, relentless nature of fandom culture. She has been nominated twice earlier for the International Booker, and I guess she will get a third time now for a new book, 7 Empty Houses, stories by Samantha Schweblin, translated from the Spanish by Megan McDowell and published by One World Publications on November 3 of 2022. Cross the thresholds of these 7 stories, empty houses, 7 empty houses, and enter the dark, destabilizing world of Samantha Schweblin. Here, homes are not a place of safety. 7 Empty Houses offers an entry point into her fiercely original mind. In each story, the twists and turns will unnerve and surprise. Schweblin never takes the expected path and instead digs under the skin and reveals uncomfortable truths about our sense of home, of belonging, and of the fragility of our connection with others. This is a masterwork from one of our most brilliant writers in world literature right now. Now comes the longest title of this long list, and maybe even the longest title I have seen in recent years, and maybe even the longest title of a novel I've seen in my life. It covers the whole cover of the book. This is a mountain to the north, a lake to the south, paths to the west, a river to the east, by Laszlo Krasznahorkai, the winner of the first International Booker when it really turned international, informed that it was only awarded for translated works in 2015. Published this one and translated from the Hungarian, of course, by Otilia Malzet, published by Tuska Rock in January of 2023. The grandson of Prince Genji lives outside of space and time and wanders the grounds of an old monastery in Kyoto, Japan. The monastery, too, is timeless, with barely a trace of human presence. The wanderer is searching for a garden that has long captivated him. This novel describes the riches and the riches to be discovered along the way. Despite difficulties in finding the garden, the reader is closely introduced to the construction processes of the monastery as well as the geological and biological processes of the surrounding area, making this an unforgettable meditation of nature, of life, of history, and of being. And we're already at the last book of this long list that I predict. It's a real dozen, it's not a Booker dozen. They might have a Booker dozen of 13, or they might have a real dozen of 12, so we don't know that. But my last book on my list comes from Sweden, and I know maybe Sweden won't get 2 shots here for the International Booker, but this is a book that is very successful. It's already, I think Netflix will turn it into a movie, and this is Stolen by Ann-Helén Lestadius, translated from the Swedish, published by Bloomsbury Circus on February 2, 2023. 9-year-old Elsa lives just north of the Arctic Circle. She and her family are Sami, Scandinavia's indigenous people, and make their living herding reindeer. One morning when Elsa goes skiing alone, she witnesses a man brutally killing her reindeer calf, Nastegalu. Elsa recognizes the man but refuses to tell anyone, least of all the Swedish police force, about what she saw. Instead, she carries her secret as a dark weight on her heart. Elsa comes of age, fighting 2 wars, one within her community, where male elders expect young women to know her place, and against the ever-escalating wave of prejudice and violence still existing against the Sami people. When Elsa finds herself the target of the man who killed her reindeer calf all those years ago, something inside of her finally breaks. The guilt, fear, and anger she's been carrying since childhood comes crashing over her like an avalanche and will lead Elsa to a final, catastrophic confrontation. These are 12 titles, my 12 titles for the long list for the International Booker, the real one, if you want so, or all these 12 titles, if I'm right, will be released to you and to me on March 14. And of course, I will do a reaction video to that long list when it comes from the Booker jury. Maybe it's exactly the same list that you saw on Wednesday, March 1, 2023. Thank you very much for watching the video. I see you very soon. Bye.